Hey guys, I'm super excited to share my interview with John Rhys-Davies today. But first, I wanted to explain how this came to be. It's a very special story. There's a young man who lives in New Zealand. His name is James Dupree. And 3 years ago, he discovered that he had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And right now, he's facing a very tough fight, and his family and friends, they started a fundraiser. It's called It's Time to Shout James. And this is to help him to be able to concentrate on fighting this disease that he's currently fighting. And that is actually how I got in contact with John Rhys-Davies. Um, I've been wanting to do something fun here on the channel for a while. For all you wonderful subscribers and my Patreon supporters, I wanted to give back to you guys for the support and in the encouragement that you've been to me as this channel has really taken off. And when I saw the opportunity to bid on a one-on-one conversation with John Rhys-Davies, I knew immediately that was something I wanted to do for you guys and to be able to share with you. So I leapt at the chance because not only was it something that I thought would be really fun for the channel, but it was helping out a great cause. And honestly, because John has such a huge heart himself, not only during our interview did he go way over the allotted time, he was so generous with his time, but he also donated a second one-on-one virtual chat. And that is where you guys come in today. So you can actually win this second one-on-one virtual chat with John Rhys-Davies. So for $20 New Zealand dollars, which is roughly less than $15 US or 12 euros or 12 pounds, if I've done my Googling properly here, you can actually get an entry. And there's no limit to the number of entries. You can donate as much as you want to get as many entries as you want. And go to the link. It's here in the description to donate, and you'll be entered to win. And we'll actually reveal the winner next week, Wednesday, November 24th, during a live stream here on the channel. And you'll also notice, if I've set my settings properly, that even though this interview is a premiere here on the channel, I have the super chat function turned off today. And that's because, honestly, I don't want you to give me anything today. So please, whatever you might have given in super chats, go to the website and please give to James. And just help him to know that he's not alone in his fight right now, and that people all over the world are thinking of him, and just help him feel the love from our fellowship of nerds. With that said, I'm really excited. Here is my conversation with John Rhys-Davies. Welcome, everyone, to Nerd of the Rings. Today, it is my great honor to welcome a very special guest. You've seen him or heard his voice in a multitude of films and series, including one of my personal favorites, Indiana Jones. But if you're on this channel, you will no doubt know him from the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time as Gimli. Mr. John Rhys-Davies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Lovely to be invited, and thank you for your very generous contribution to young James's shout out.
Absolutely. Yes, the charity shout out for James, as I explained just before this video rolled, is a great cause, helping a young man with Hodgkin lymphoma. So be sure to go to the link in the description to donate for that. So John, let's start off kind of toward the beginning. How were you first introduced to the world of Tolkien?
I have two sons, and about 47 years ago, no, maybe a bit more than that, maybe 43 years ago, my son returned from his boarding school at half term, my elder son, Ben, and we didn't see him for 5 days. He was reading Lord of the Rings. And he was the real first convert in the family. I vaguely heard of the book when I was at university, because I was at university 63 to 66.
Okay.
And I think Lord of the Rings comes out in 57, 58 or something like that. I know all the girls at the university, and it was a very small university. I was at the University of East Anglia in its very first years. So the first year, there were 105 of us, including postgrads. And the girls had all read Lord of the Rings, which of course meant, if the girls were reading Lord of the Rings, well, it wasn't a chap's thing. I'm hard science fiction, fantasy, well, doesn't work with me. My second encounter with Lord of the Rings was when young Tom, my second son, returned from school and with it, and we tried reading it, and he hated it, and we both ended up falling asleep. I tried it for several times, and I couldn't get into it. So it was a slightly sinking heart when I realized that instead of acquiring a nice small part in Lord of the Rings, which would take me to New Zealand for a month so I could get to see New Zealand and come back, because surely this little chap in New Zealand who'd done a number of small films really wasn't going to be able to pull off something as enormous as this. I mean, anyone can make a movie when you've got, say, 4 people or 6 people and 4 weeks to shoot it in, and a simple 4-hander, or anyone can do that. And they do all the time, depressingly. But and I've been in some. But to do something as huge as this, with 21 leading characters, casts of thousands, and a story that does not lend itself to cinematic presentation, or certainly didn't before. Even Tolkien, the author himself, did not believe it could possibly be made into a movie.
Right.
I thought this was nonsense. Anyway, I struggled. And then when I got Gimli, and the only reason I played Gimli was because of number one son, really, who said, well, number one son and my manager. My manager said, John, if you, he's my manager now, he was then my agent, Jeff Goldberg, thank you. He said, John, if you turn down this part, I don't think we can continue to represent you, which I thought was very sweet. And number one son, Ben, said, Dad, with due respect, I think you're nuts for turning this down. And I said, why is that, son? He said, well, just think, in every bookshop of the literate world, anywhere in the world, there is 2 feet of bookshelving dedicated to Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, He said, just think of what that means in terms of a fan base.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but anyway, I didn't want to do it. I mean, I didn't want to do it anyway, so I had to read it then. And I read it and kept falling asleep. And I struggled to the end and started again and read it again and kept falling asleep. And then I tried the 3rd time, and then somewhere halfway through the 3rd time, something started to click. And I started again, and I think I began to get it. This is not a book as any book that I had ever read before. And that was basically my resistance.
Yeah.
It is an attempt at a new style of writing and a recreation of a pre-Arthurian mythology for Britain. And once you realize that it isn't exactly like, but you can see the derivation from the Norse sagas, which again are not particularly linear in their narrative form. It goes from here to here. Oh, by the way, his son did this. His son actually murdered another 5-year-old, and then obviously went on to become a great warrior. But let's get back to his cousin over here. Tolkien is unquestionably one of the great giants and great sports in the plant sense. A sport is one of those rare breakthroughs that just spontaneously occur and change the whole development of that type of plant. And it's a very fertile, a very fertile sport as well, because a whole genre of fantasy writing is derived from it.
So you mentioned, obviously you read the book in preparation for the role. After you got the role, was there, what else did you do to prepare to become Gimli, so to speak?
Well, I still didn't really want to do Gimli. I mean, why you spend 40 years of your life. Is that right? Yes, I was getting on for it. It was nearly 40 years of your acting life, trying to become a recognized face. And then you're going to cover it in foam rubber for something that's it's not going to work. People have tried it. It is not going to work. To do something like this, you need the film resources of a Rome or an LA or possibly a London. Yeah, this isn't going to happen. This little chap in New Zealand, with all due respect to him, he's going to make some fine, nice little films. But this. Do you know what happens when you have an 18-month shoot or something like that? Something goes wrong in month 4 or 5 when there's a lot of money spent on it and you start getting delays. And the hole that you're in gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you get somebody coming out and saying, we've got to cut. I remember when we did Shogun, somebody was sent out to cut 1 hour out of the show.
Oh, wow.
But that's another story, and a good one too. But so I thought, well, look, I will go there and convince myself that this is a waste of time. I don't want to spend 3 years of my life doing something that ends up, failing in the box office and going direct to DVD. 8 months later, and we never actually get to finishing it. It's a waste of life. There are other more interesting things to do. So I went there with a measure of duplicity in my heart. I didn't really want to do the part. I didn't really want to do that much time, but I felt that I had to give it some serious consideration. So I prepared myself by going into every department in Wellington that was connected with the film. The design department, the construction, the carpenters. Let's see what they're doing. Let's look at the designs. Let's look at the costume department. Let's look at the armory. And I spent a morning and an afternoon in every damn department. And my heart sank because every department had a level of expertise that you would only expect to find in the great film capitals of the world.
Wow.
But more than that, there was an energy and an enthusiasm that was actually unique in my experience. Filmmakers can become blasé. Crews can become blasé. We've done this, we know how to do it and all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's just another job, really.
Yeah.
But these were fresh and keen. And fresh and keen won't do it by itself. But there was such a depth of organization and vision and execution there that it was really depressing because I didn't have an easy get out. But there was still another thing. Let's see how this little chap handles his crew and handles his actors, because you can sometimes tell just by the way a director handles his crew, whether it's going to be a waste of time or not.
Yeah.
Sometimes he handles his crew badly, and it's not a waste of time. Sometimes it can be a damn good film, but there's no joy in it. And who wants to spend 3 joyless years?
Yeah.
So I went and watched this little chap from New Zealand, effortlessly answering every question, simply, clearly, modestly. A natural, an unnaturally self-made natural leader who turned me around. Actually, I thought, my God, this guy could bring it off. Now, I haven't actually thought what bringing this off means or entails. Let me think about this. We started, and about 2 weeks afterwards, I am proud to say that we had a press conference, and right at that same time, in Australia, they were making the first of the new Star Wars.
Yeah.
And at this press conference, I'm proud to say that I said, ladies and gentlemen of the press, please revise your expectations upwards. 3 predictions. 1, this film is going to be bigger than the new Star Wars. At which point Peter Jackson went, Secondly, this film and its successors are going to be amongst the most successful films of this decade and possibly the first half of this century. Thirdly, in 20 years' time, when you look back on these films, they're going to be amongst the favorite films that you've ever seen. Headline in local newspaper, actor claims Peter Jackson's new film will be bigger than Star Wars.
But you're right on all 3 counts.
Cut to 18 months later, PJ comes up to me and he says, you know, when you said that they were going to be bigger than Star Wars, well, we just had the latest numbers in, and actually we just outgrossed Star Wars.
Yeah. So you knew pretty early on. One of my favorite questions to ask folks I've had on, like Billy and Dom and Mark Ordesky and folks like that, I ask them at what point they realized Lord of the Rings was something truly special. And it sounds like you knew pretty early on.
Well, I'd had experience of big projects. I mean, War and Remembrance, 18 months of principal photography shot around the world. And we had problems then. We got into, one of our leading ladies got pneumonia, and we basically had to shut down for a month and a bit. Shogun, as I mentioned before, when I did Shogun, we were meant to spend 3 weeks in Tokyo in the tanks filming this, the sea sequences, and we spent 8 weeks there. Believe me, that was not a cheap experience for the film company.
Yeah.
So when you've had and I mean the Indiana Jones things,
right? Yeah,
pretty large as well.
Yeah. So
when you've had experiences of those big projects, it's you've got some yardstick with which to measure, and I was probably the only person there that had that yardstick. So it was a little bit of a cheat. but what to do a 180 from arriving there with a hope to find a good get out. So I'd have gone to Peter and said, Peter, I'm so sorry. I can't stay away from, my personal family difficulties at the moment. My wife my wife was developing Alzheimer's, and well, she had developed Alzheimer's, and it was really just, you know, increasingly after we did Lord of the Rings, my own travel world for film got smaller and smaller, because I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
You know, so that, you know, when that end crisis came, you know, I would be available available to get there. And, you know, it's the impact of something like that in your personal life is pretty catastrophic anyway. But anyway, I would have gone to him and said, "Look, Peter, sorry, can't do this. Beg pardon. Forgive me, but I'm sure you can find somebody else to fill the part perfectly well." But I couldn't. You know, what he had done, what this little anonymous filmmaker in a tiny little country at the other side of the world had done, was to build an entire film industry of the highest standards to serve his vision of how basically The Hobbit, but first of all, it had to be Lord of the Rings, was to be made. I was, in the end, I was very pleased to be in it. It was bloody hard. Oh, I beg your pardon. Mustn't swear to your audience. It was very hard.
Yeah.
But what a filmmaker! What a film producer! I mean, basically, he made the film industry. He made a significant film industry, and he did more to put New Zealand on the map of the world than any man since Captain Cook. Extraordinary.
That's how I learned about New Zealand, for sure. I knew Australia was down there. I did not. I was not a big geography person before. I probably know Middle Earth geography better than the world geography, but I know where New Zealand now is, by golly.
Yes, indeed. And so does the world. I believe their tourist industry was registered just over $1 billion and a half a year in 1999. And before COVID in 2019, they fudged the figure. Well, they changed the basis on which they make the figures. So it's either 14 billion or 17 billion a year.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But New Zealand owes an awful lot to Peter Jackson.
Indeed.
And they had a silly prime minister, a socialist prime minister, called Helen Clark, who had decided to get rid of knighthoods and institute the New Zealand Order of Merit, which thankfully a subsequent, a more sensible prime minister revoked. And I made great enemies with Miss Clark, because I said, now, who was the idiot who single-handedly decided to get rid of knighthoods? You know, Peter Jackson, Order of the New Zealand Order of the Splatted Possum, Grade 1, doesn't
have the ring to it.
It doesn't have the ring to it. As when he goes into an LA studio looking for money for a project with that on, but Sir Peter Jackson, that actually makes people say, "Oh, yeah." I was not her favorite. In fact, we were all invited to the Beehive, which is their Parliament building in Wellington.
Okay.
And I was the only person who didn't get to shake hands with the Prime Minister for some reason. I can't think why. Anyway, PJ got his knighthood.
He did.
Deservedly so.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Sorry about that.
No.
Total digression, wasn't it?
That's digressions are fantastic. So we talk a lot about Gimli, obviously, but you also got to play Treebeard in the films. So at what point did that decision come into play? And how was your approach different with Treebeard?
Oh dear. Well, PJ said, why don't you do Treebeard? And I thought, oh, more money. Good. Yes, of course I can do that. Yes, of course, Peter. Right. Okay, let's have a look at it. Right. Well, this is quite simple, really. What we've got here is a walking, talking, no lungs, non-tree, with a very slow time sense. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, let me just have a little think about that. Right. Okay. Yep. Well, let's try it. Oh, that doesn't work, does it? Let's try it this way. Right. Listen, I've got this great idea. Why don't we really slow it down? I will speak rapidly, and let us, record at high speed and then play. Oh, something like that. What I wanted to do is try and get almost a whale noise sound out of it. Let's try that. All right. Well, that doesn't work either. Look, the problem is this character speaks slowly, and that works on paper. You manipulate time in a different way on paper than you do on film. A pause this long may work on stage. It may certainly work on paper. But you try and do that in an entire scene on film, you're dead.
Yeah.
This is the only part that I still wake up thinking. I've woken up thinking, as actors do, the day after filming something up. Oh, I missed that. How could I have been so stupid? The line actually should go that way. I've done that many times before, and doubtless will continue to do so. But with this one, I still wake up in sweats at night because I do not know how to do it. I created something in the end, but I don't think it's right. And I don't know how to do it.
It's a tricky character.
Well, it's because it's a fantasy creature, but a very specifically designed fantasy creature. If you say, John, you are a walking, talking whale, I will go, ooh! My flippers are going excited on me. Oh, krill alive. Oh, yeah, any actor can do that. But this is a very specific creature. I tried to get the squelch of the roots coming out of the ground, and the that sound that branches make when they rub together in the wind. All these elements are part of it, and I couldn't do it.
Well, I, for one, am really excited for a future production that features John the walking, talking whale after hearing that.
Well, as a matter of fact, there are a few interesting things coming along. We're just trying to devise a lovely character called who is the series title is Moscow, Nevada, in which, comrade, I play No, I better not talk about that because otherwise my producers will kill me. But anyway, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And yesterday, no, not yesterday, last week, I had a conversation with somebody who wants to make a comic book series. And they approached me, and I said, no, I don't want to make a comic book series of my life. It's, it's too dangerous. But if you wanted to use the films as a stepping stone into the imaginative life, that would be a different thing. And that might be educational, and we came up with some ideas, and we're actually going to try and go ahead with that. So,
awesome.
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Well, when you think, at least 300 archaeologists have come up to me. When I'm talking, I say archaeologists, field archaeologists, museum curators, collection creators, full professors of archaeology have come up to me at fan conventions and said, the real reason I got interested in archaeology is when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And from that, I've had the opportunity to do voiceover narrations for exhibitions of Egyptian and Roman archaeology, and stuff like that. I ended up doing a wonderful little series called Archaeology for the Learning Channel when it was around. So it's given me a number of opportunities, but when you combine that with, I did a series called Sliders, which was a sci-fi series. And a fan wrote to me afterwards and said, "Dear Mr. Rhys-Davies, this device that provides access into a parallel universe. You and I must work on this because we can bring this to the world and make a great deal of money for it." And when I gently said, "Well, thank you for your interest and support and all that thing," obviously, this is a television series and it's
right.
It's not real. And the correspondence got progressively nastier as he accused me of trying to cut him out of an invention that could benefit the entire world and make a fortune. And I was just being a selfish, obsessed, man, keeping a secret that the world should have. But
it's a little more than you bargained for when you sign up to narrate something.
Oh yes. But but the comic book potential of that, is all right. So archaeologists or people assume that I know something about archaeology. I know a little bit about history because, well, let me show you. Sorry, this is the upstairs library. It's a bit messy at the moment. I don't know. There's that lot over there, which is largely history and philosophy, and there's that lot over there, which is largely Shakespeare, and there's this lot here, which is sort of literature and stuff like that. And it's one of 4 libraries in the house. So it's now, have I read 20,000 books? No, I haven't. I wish I had. I'm just altering this. Is that a bad idea?
No, that's great. That's great.
No, I wish I had. But they're reference things, and when I want to know, you could do a PhD on 20 or so subjects quite happily here. But then I belong to that, I hope not last generation of people who just love books.
Yeah.
Just to feel something that, well, look, what have I got here? Wait. There, look at that. I think Joyce himself may have held that.
Oh, wow.
Poems, penny each. I think they did, how many prints of that? This is copyright by James Joyce, 1927. Hang on. Oh, it doesn't say, but I would think he probably didn't do more than that. Oh, wait a minute, look at that. Of these poems, 13 copies have been printed on Dutch handmade paper and numbered 1 to 13. But I suspect there were 1,000 copies of this one made. But Joyce himself may have held it.
Yeah.
One of the things that he picked up and looked through and thought, oh gosh, gonna have some money coming in this year. I know my Ben Jonson and Ibsen, of course. The Joyce letters are quite amazing. Anyway, that's just what's over there. But yes, I love books.
Well, that was going to actually be one of my questions later on. Is so what is your personal favorite book?
Oh dear.
We got to encourage viewers to read. So if we get a
indeed.
recommendation,
right. Let me tell you what I've just finished, which I should have done when it first came out, but I only came across it quite recently. Justinian's Flea. It's a book about the Emperor Justinian and the first impact of the Black Death coming out of Africa and hitting Europe and ending basically the concept of Rome controlling the Mediterranean and European world. And it allows the German tribes like the Franks, to, in the end, set up their own Frankish state that we call France.
Yeah.
There was not a page in it that didn't tell me something that I didn't know. And that's wonderful.
It's a fun feeling.
One of the saddest things about old age is if you're not careful, you can go entire days without learning something new. You can go entire days without hearing somebody say something that you haven't heard before. And that's a fearful waste of time, isn't it? And so one's got to throw oneself out there and jump into conversations that you know a bit about, but not enough.
Yeah.
And I have to say, going to fan conventions does that. Obviously, there are a lot of questions that are repeated, and you have to answer them politely and courteously, and sadly, you can't sometimes think of any other way of answering them.
Yeah.
But sometimes somebody makes a point, and you go away and think, "Wow, I had never realized that." And I find that there has been a real sea change in me as a person as a result of going to fan conventions. I found, when I first went to a fan convention around about 1998 or something like that, I thought, oh God, why do I have to go to one of these things? all these people dressed up as Captain Kirk, and can't they get a proper life, for God's sake? And I went along and, overcoming your natural shyness, actually. And and learning to talk to people and learning how to avoid talking about yourself and getting them to talk about themselves was one of the great lessons I learned in life. But the more I got to talk to people, the more I allowed them to talk and listened to them, the more my respect just grew.
Yeah.
And I realized those people that should get a life, as I casually dismiss them, actually have a life. And it's a very rich life. It's a hugely imaginative life that really sustains them and sometimes keeps them alive. I cannot tell you how many people have come up to me and said, Lord of the Rings got me through this time when my father was dying, and we watched Lord of the Rings together. Lord of the Rings got me through this illness. I had cancer, and I would just binge watch time and time again Lord of the Rings. And you suddenly actually realize that there's even a therapeutic value to movies.
Absolutely.
But they have taught me so much. In fact, I came to the conclusion a year or so, 2 or 3 years ago, perhaps, that what really I get from going to fan conventions, the great gift they have given me, is they have taught me how to like people. I think as a young man, I didn't really like people. I was the Byronic hero. Damn it. Well, the aged and faded Byronic hero, dressed somewhat roughly, but my excuse is I've been stripping rotten wood from a little barn outside that we took the slates off last week. I didn't really have time to go and dress up for this, and I should have done. Respect for your audience. But the audience has taught me how marvelous people are, how marvelous most people are in life, and what heroes some of them are. You know, to look at the exhausted mother who has brought up a child who is deaf and dumb, and yet glows with a serenity and for an old skeptic and a man who really is more science-based than spirit-based. Sometimes you see a real manifestation of the divine in people. And when you do that, you are very humbled and at the same time just reminded of the extra dimensions of reality around us.
Yeah.
Or to watch a father who's brought along a 10 or 12-year-old boy who is blind. And yet you can see, as you talk to him, you can see the pictures in his mind and the delight and the sheer active intelligence walking there. It's glorious. It's glorious. And if I taught for a while, and thankfully for teaching, I left teaching. But there is an old pedagogue in me still that I love children, and just to watch the light of imagination or the pain of thought crossing a child's face, or being able to say something that suddenly opens up a whole new line in their imagination, or their sense of what is possible.
Yeah.
That is glorious. That's glorious. And that's, yeah.
So you mentioned, the Lord of the Rings, and I've had the same experience myself, and people I've talked to, that there's a therapeutic aspect of it, and whether it's certain parts or the work as a whole really deeply affects people. Do you have a scene from the movies that's your favorite that stands out above the rest as you look back?
Look, there are so many wonderful memories that I
Yeah.
have from that. When I'm asked that question at a fan convention on a stage, I just look at the audience and jump up and down as if I'm trying to look over a battlement somewhere. And they get it.
Yeah.
But no, just being part of that magnificent telling of a unique story was in itself. The totality is made up of all those separate elements and moments, but it's still bigger than that too.
Yeah.
And once you start adding the element of the audience and the audience's love and approval to it, it has to be one of the most significant experiences of any actor's life. Certainly this one.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No,
but
that's great.
But let me. I don't know whether I actually sort of actually said this, but one of the things that I'm hoping that if we go ahead with this little comic series, that one can do is lead interested people, or people who are only marginally interested, into discovering history, discovering areas of life that they don't actually know and understand. And because that is the great journey of mankind, isn't it? Is to we're the curious monkey. We are the one, and increasingly, I would teach every subject. Were I in charge of curriculums now, I think I teach every subject through history. The objection, of course, becomes, what about mathematics? But number one son Ben the other day said, when you think about it, Dad, maths is history. I said, and he said, think about it. Maths is a series of cheats, of ways of solving problems invented by the greatest minds of their time on their very best day. And when we study maths in school, what we're doing up until the time we're 15 or 16, we are studying the history of maths from the year dot to the year 1600. Then when we get into calculus and stuff like that in the next 2 years, we're studying the history of mathematics from 1600 to 1800. And when we're studying mathematics at university, we are studying the maths from 1800 to the present day. An interesting way of looking at things.
It is, yeah.
But if you can entertain and educate, and I had a great experience of this. I did a series called Gargoyles.
Oh, yes, yeah.
In which I played a character called Macbeth. And the writers had done a brilliant job of researching 14th century Scotland, 13th century Scotland, Scottish history. And their version of Macbeth is really closer to the history than Shakespeare ever got.
Wow.
Mind you, Shakespeare had to be a bit careful because he was writing for King James, and
Right.
and King James, I think, was descended from Duncan, who was murdered by Macbeth. Yeah, but what a privilege to be an actor in marvelous and recognized great movies, and to be able to say, have you thought of this? Look, why don't you go on and look at this? Read Justinian's Flea, for instance.
Yeah.
And for me, who had there are big gaps in your knowledge of European history or world history. And I got a pile of books over there on Chinese history. I haven't even started on them yet. And suddenly to be able to sort of fill in what happens after the fall of Rome in 410, between then and the bits that come afterwards, 8, 9. Yeah. Well, we know a little bit about the Vikings and all, but what happened in that little bit in between? From 600 to 800.
Yeah.
The rise of Islam. One of the reasons Islam rises is because the desert communities were cut off from the Black Death earlier than the old Roman Empire, the great trading centers, where the plague followed, where the rats followed the grain out of Africa and into Europe. The Roman Empire lost 20 million people. There weren't enough soldiers to guard the empire. There was sometimes not enough food, which meant that slavery actually began a measure of manumission, because the slaves that survived started farming for themselves, because the masters were dead.
Wow. So this is interesting, because one of the fan submitted questions I had when I asked some of my supporters, one asked, if you didn't become an actor, what do you think you would be doing? It sounds like you might be a historian.
Oh Lord, I'll tell you, I really set out not to be an actor, but to be a writer. As we know, all actors are out of work for at least 6 months of the year. And in those 6 months, I would be writing the masterpieces for which you would be interviewing me now. Didn't quite happen that way. That wonderful aphorism, if you want to make God laugh, tell him you have a plan. What would I have been? Well, let's assume that I could not have been a writer or an actor. I was too egotistic as a younger man to be a good teacher. I mean, you are talking to the guy who started off doing science in those 2 years prior to university, and gave up halfway through because I realized my mathematics would prevent me from ever earning a Nobel. I mean, if you can't get a Nobel, why go into?
What's the point, right?
I weep when I think of the younger Rhys-Davies. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I really like him that much. He certainly is a class 1 idiot. So let's assume then that I couldn't have done those things. What would I have done? Well, I like engineering. I dabble a bit, as you may notice.
Yeah.
It is. Yes. It was really an orc that bit it, and I had to cut it off with the axe, of course, because you can't have orc poison going through your blood. Anyway, no, love mechanical things, and I always imagine that I will do more than I ever get time to even start. But isn't that true of life?
Yeah.
So, like reading all these books, will I ever read all of them? No, I don't know that I will.
It's an awful lot.
Yeah, but I've read all Tom Nash up there and Middleton, and but you see, the letters of Thomas Hood. Who the heck reads Thomas Hood these days? And who reads his letters?
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that tonight.
Maybe you should. Yeah,
absolutely.
Then you have the answer to that question.
Yeah. Me.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to me, doesn't it? Oh, God.
Well, I know we're getting short on time here, so I want to.
No, you ask any questions that you like, and I will try and give you answers.
Well, I've got a few shorter questions that,
Please.
So we usually do, like, toward the end of these, we usually do kind of a rapid fire. So this is great. So a few questions. One, which Lord of the Rings cast member was most like the character they played?
Oh, impossible to ask. They made them. When you read the book now, you hear those individual voices coming through.
Yeah.
I can't go there. I think the effort of casting was brilliant.
Yeah.
And if you are a director and you cast well, then you've actually done 90% of your job. Maybe not, but the crucial bit is done if you get it right.
That's one thing I've always loved about the films. Like, it amazes me how well those films were cast.
Yes.
I can't even begin to think of a film that's been more perfectly cast than The Lord of the Rings. I'll
tell you what, in an earlier cut, I did say to Peter, this guy does not work. This character, his voice is completely wrong. And, and I won't tell you which actor it was. And PJ listened, and it was probably not just me that had said this. When the film came out, the character was as wonderful as the rest of the characters. He'd obviously worked on him, and the actor had worked on it, and had probably seen the other performances and realized where his performance needed to be pitched and gauged. And we'll fix it in the post certainly worked there.
So who is your favorite Tolkien character other than Gimli?
Well, I suppose you want me to make some comment about the pointy-eared fella, eh? He's engaging enough, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, it cheats a lot. Anyone can do all that sort of stuff. But as I like to tell my audience, for real wet work, you need an axe.
That's right.
Yeah. But the wee hobbits, they're nice lads. They're little hobbits, and we bigger characters are there to protect them, as we should be. There will be no bullying. There will be no outrageous behavior by the bad side. How dare they threaten we hobbits? They gotta come up against a real dwarf to get to the hobbits. And bring them on, I say. There's nothing that a dwarf fears. Well, when I say nothing that but there are some spooky things that, go on, witchcraft and all that sort of stuff. And there is a witch in the forest, let me tell you. And rumor has it, I don't pay any account of these rumors, of course, because I'm a pragmatic sort of dwarf, but there is a witch in this forest, they say, that if you do but set eyes upon her, your life will never again be the same. And his life never is again.
No, it's not. That's another fan favorite interaction there is between Gimli and Galadriel for sure.
Yeah, because she actually connects with him in a way that she doesn't with anyone else. Obviously, the ring bearer has a special blessing, but each one of them gets a blessing. But she sees that the need of Gimli is to find the fellowship of love, and what she is saying is basically, when she gives, I asked for one hair from her golden head. She gave me 3. And what she says, what the message of that is, ask for love, and it will be returned 3-fold. I think.
Yeah.
Of course, he doesn't quite get that.
Right.
Maybe he does.
And I think, I know. You might have already, discovered this, but the history behind that, back in ancient days, there was an elf who, Feanor, who requested a single hair 3 times of Galadriel, and she refused him. That's right. So it's pretty awesome. I love that's completely over Gimli's head. And, we kind of, as an audience, those of us who've, gone deep in the Silmarillion and everything, we kind of have that smirk like Legolas has in the back of the boat there, where he understands something bigger, and Gimli's just ecstatic about his 3 strands of hair.
3, isn't it 3?
Yes, yeah.
That's 3, yeah. Yes, and you know exactly what is going to happen, don't you? The moment that he gets it home and he starts, he gets out, gets the forge going. Gonna have gold here, and we're gonna set some nice big stones there. You can't have too many rubies, I think. No, and diamonds too. But I mean, it's going to become one of those sort of over elaborated icons or frames surrounding a chip of the true cross. It will be kitschy, but it's or is it? Or am I just maybe I'm not being fair?
I know in the book he said his exact words are that he's going to set it in imperishable crystal.
Yes.
And then it would be an heirloom of his house.
Yes.
Treasure it forever.
Yes. Yes. There is perhaps that when we that reading that you have asked me to do.
Yeah.
Perhaps that really indicates a greater aesthetic sensibility in Gimli than I've actually realized before. Oh, damn it. Now you're going to make me want to play the part in a different way. Oh.
Well, I will say, so on that topic, when I had Sir Richard Taylor on, we were talking about their wonderful that's my turn to go to the bookshelf here. They're wonderful. They have these mini epic figures, and there's the one. I don't have Gimli on the shelf right now. He's still in his box. But
You don't have Gimli on the shelf?
I do. I have plenty of Gimlis. I've got a bobblehead, a Funko Pop. I think I've got a Lego back there. So he's well represented, but I'm waiting for more shelf space to bring out more Gimli. But Sir Richard Taylor and I have this idea that they should make a stop motion or animated show based on their little figures here. I think it would be wonderful if they did that and brought you back, and you could be a whole nother Gimli for a whole nother audience.
I love Richard. In fact, I've got a script that I showed him that I'm going to have to try and beat the money tree for. It's about your ancestor, who is actually my ancestor. But it's an important piece, I think, because it tells us something about human nature. And at the end, we will be cheering and crying at the same time. But there's a piece in it that I want him to do the special the artwork for the special effect. And I showed it to him, and he said, I saw him the next day, and I said, "How are you?" I said, "You sleep well?" And he said, "No, John, I didn't sleep well. I spent the entire night thinking about that wonderful idea you've got there and how to do it." You know, imagination is a part of the sympathetic system that is the easiest to infect.
Yeah.
The fire of an idea, is like a raging furnace that rushes through our brains and sometimes changes us.
Yeah. Now, we've obviously talked a lot about Lord of the Rings. I would be so disappointed in myself if I didn't bring up Indiana Jones at all. I'm curious, is there any chance we'll get to see Sala in the upcoming Indiana Jones 5?
Well, they'd have surely announced it if it was going to happen, wouldn't they?
Maybe. Or are they keeping it a secret? They can be secretive about things these days.
Can any secret be kept for long these days? Did you see anything? Do you think there's any truth of that rumor that Banderas might be in it?
I did hear that. Yeah.
I think he's probably playing the John Rhys-Davies part.
You think so?
Bastard.
Well, I'll cross my fingers anyway. I'm hoping when I go to the movie theater that maybe Sala will make an appearance. I understand. You probably couldn't even tell me if you were anyway.
Oh, that's probably true. I mean, if I'd been contracted to do it, they would probably have put, but you must be quiet about this until we announce it or something like that.
Right.
However, of course, they didn't contract me, did they? So.
Okay.
And one would have to deny, wouldn't one?
One would, yes.
It's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Really? Did he? Didn't he? Could it be? Or maybe not. Why didn't he do the last one? Well, there you are. See, life is full of mysteries, but I can tell you that the director is a very good director. In fact, the only film that I've watched 3 times this year is Ford versus Ferrari, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
What else have I seen this year that I loved? Oh, I've completely forgotten now. The year's almost gone, and it is. Goes in one ear, comes out the other. When you get to my age, it's nurse, I've wetted myself again. Not quite there yet, but yes. Right. So come on, ask some questions.
Oh,
You've
yes.
got
Okay.
fans.
So
You've got responsibility to your fans there. Come on.
So I do have one more question. So I heard I heard that you played a prank on Peter Jackson with something with an injured finger. Is that correct?
What finger would that be? This is entirely down to my marvelous makeup man, dear Dino. He actually he said, look, why don't we do this? So, as you may notice, I have lost the tip of this finger fighting orcs. No, it actually it got shot out by the Luftwaffe, when my Spitfire had run out of ammunition and things like that. No, it's a long story. Basically, it was a crocodile, I think. But anyway, so what he did was he took a cast of this finger and made a beautiful tip to the finger, which we put on there. And in the middle of it, we put a little bit of white representing the bone. And we put a lovely few bits of carmine around it, representing a bit of blood. So I went up to Peter and said, Peter, I've just, and I started tilting it that way, a little bit. I said, I cut myself a little bit there, Peter. Can you see this? Yes. And I started tilting it slowly up that way. He said, well, John, I think you ought to go and see that.
Oh my gosh.
It was a nice one.
Yeah.
Sick. But that's obviously one of the reasons why Gimli wore those gloves all the time.
Right. Yeah. I didn't realize that. That's something new to me.
Well, yes. I didn't want more makeup on my blasted hands as well. Oh.
Yeah. I'm sure you were saying how you were originally looking for an out. I'm sure had you known the troubles you'd run into with the makeup, that probably would have factored in your decision.
Well, I knew there would be. Everyone lies to you. My then manager, whom I love and adore still, she said, oh, John, they'll get the makeup down to about an hour every day. And I said, you are lying to me. You have never had makeup on. Of course I have. I'm a woman. I said, sweetheart, you have never had full prosthetic makeup on. This will take hours out of my life. This will be agony. And why would I spend 30, 40 years trying to be a recognized actor to cover myself in 2 inches of blasted foam? But anyway, I got talked into it. And yeah, it was a really unpleasant time. Not because there was an allergic reaction, as I endlessly explained this. Medical adhesive is hypoallergenic. It doesn't actually give you an allergic response. Well, what it does to is it really bonds to the surface cells of the skin. And that's how it sticks. But it's not designed to be taken off and put on a daily basis, because to get it off, you basically have to take a tiny layer of the skin cells with you.
Right.
And that's fine normally. You take it off and day goes by and everything's cured. But when you keep taking it off, you get deeper and deeper and deeper. And the skin under your eyes is some of the thinnest skin on the human body. It's about twice the thickness of a cigarette paper.
Oh, wow.
And what happened was I lost all the skin around the eyes. all the top layer of skin. You remember when you were a little boy and you fell over and grazed your knee, and it was that absolutely lobster red stuff with that white, with that shiny coat of basically lymph, I suppose, trying to heal the surface. And the whole body sense, oh, we got a major opening there. Let's send everything in there, build up the new skin quickly and things like that. Well, that's fine. But every time it tried, the makeup went back on and it removed again. I used to go in on a Monday and they would look at me and go, John, you can't work today because there is not enough skin around the eyes for us to be able to stick the prosthetic to.
Prosthetics, wow.
And I'd go away, and Tuesday and Wednesday it would cross over, and I'd go back in perhaps on Wednesday or maybe Thursday, and they put it on. And as they put it on, you would feel the crust beginning to break up and start sliding, and it was the toughest job I've ever had, given that. And you had somebody in your face. Well, it basically took about 4.5, 5 hours to get to that point.
Yeah.
Where you could then put the wig on, and then you put the wig on and the beard on and things like that. But in terms of actually filming, the touch-ups, normally what happens is, okay, let's roll it, and action, cut, right, let's go again, and in dashes the makeup person and dabs you with a little bit of powder and things like that. So, yep, you're fine. Hair comes in, wardrobe comes in. With me, we'd go cut, and then there would be a 20-minute interval while they touched up the makeup. In the end, I said, look, this is ridiculous. We can't just hold up the filmmaking with everybody around for this amount of time. Look, I'll do the line, and I'll keep doing it 5, 6, 10 times till we've got the line right. We don't actually need the others around. Let me just, because we can't afford that amount of time. And in the end, that's a lot of my stuff was shot on my own.
Right.
I had a stand-in who also did some doubling for. Actually, I had three stunt doubles, but and he would get up and he would give them the eye line. I couldn't give them. I was the
right. You're very tall, yeah.
I was the tallest member of the fellowship. I couldn't get down to give them, the right eye line.
Yeah.
Sort of, and now he said, trying to get up. And so it was very useful for them to be able to play to his appropriate height and things like that. But I mean, all my stuff, really, not all. Obviously, there are some big set pieces where the Council of Elrond and things like that early on, where I really am there. But even then, they had to do some trick photography.
Right.
But a lot of it was done when everybody else had gone home, and they'd trot me out, and the script supervisor would read, or somebody would read, and yes, but it was the only way to do it. Hard, but not impossible. I mean, the great thing about that is that if you get a chance at running the more complicated lines, you've got a chance of developing a momentum there that and you can give them lots of different variants to cut to as well.
Yeah.
And I used to like it because Peter would say, all right, we've got the script as written now. Okay, I'm going to cut you loose now, John. Let's vamp a bit. And I would start vamping, and when I heard a giggle from him, I knew that at least it was going to be in the first assembly, you know. but you get moments arising because of the presence, because of the interaction of the actors with each other.
Yeah.
There's that scene where we are jumping, and I jumped, and I tried to give this impression that Gimli was about to was wobbling a little bit like that.
Yeah.
And instinctively, lovely Orlando reaches out and he grabs me by the beard. I have to grab his hand, and we don't want to lose the shot. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you pull that off, that's another hour and a half out of my life. Not the beard. And there are always felicitous moments in movie making that you have to keep in the film.
Yeah.
Great fun. Great fun.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Keep going.
You mentioned, how you were actually the tallest member of the fellowship, and I think that's part of the reason that I went kind of an embarrassingly long time before connecting the dots of you being, that Gimli was played by the same person as Sala from Indiana Jones. I was exposed to Indiana Jones when I was like 8 years old or something. So I had been a big fan of Indiana Jones. And then one day it clicked, and it just blew my mind that these are the same people. It's one of those things as, a young man, it made me love and appreciate filmmaking and the craftsmanship that went into those films that, my mind was telling me, no, this guy's really tall, but I was fooled 100%. Speaking of Indiana Jones, I briefly mentioned it earlier. Do you have any favorite stories from your time in the 2 Indiana Jones films that you were in? Obviously, you acted with Harrison Ford, who's a big actor that a lot of people have fun stories of. I didn't know if you had any yourself that were your favorite.
Not particularly great fun stories per se, but I will say, watching Harrison over the years, as he has grown from an ambitious young actor into a great star of film, has been wonderful and impressive. He really is one of the big stars of his age.
Yeah.
And it isn't just luck. I mean, all actors need luck. When you get Han Solo, it's in a production, that really takes off. That's luck.
Yeah.
But already he makes Han Solo steal the film. And then when you then get the chance to do an adventure type film that's aimed for the sort of audience that enjoyed those Saturday morning movies, which people don't have anymore. And it's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. And you use that to stamp your claim on being a bankable box office superstar. That's very impressive. But he's just gone on growing and growing and growing. I mean, his Jack Ryan, for instance. How lucky do you have to get three great franchises like that? But it's not just luck. and I like his Ryan. I
Hmm.
think I think it is very strong, very
Yeah.
American, and very different. It has been a great education watching a star make himself over the
Mm.
years, and uh, and I respect him deeply for that.
Yeah.
Mm.
On the topic of Indiana Jones, I will say one of my favorite Indiana Jones moments comes in Last Crusade when you punch the guy through the newspaper. You're holding up the newspaper, and I don't know why. It's one of those moments where I feel like I laugh a disproportionate amount to most people. Like most people chuckle at it, but I start rolling laughing because it's just a great bit of physical comedy.
Well, I think there is. I think there is that opportunity in the character to
Yeah.
do that. Um, but but you're not the only person, by the way, who finds it howlingly funny.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many autograph pictures I've had where uh, where they've asked me to include the words "run, run."
Oh, that's fantastic. Well,
No, well, we're not doing too bad for time.
yeah,
Would you like a bit more? Come on.
we've got a special treat, guys. I sent John a reading. You guys have said over and over how one of your favorite moments in the books is Gimli talking about the glittering caves, and John has very graciously agreed to read a bit of Gimli describing the glittering caves for us. So I'll let John take it away.
You asked me for a little reading from Tolkien, Gimli's great description of the mines or the caverns of Helm's Deep. So let me try and read it for you. A glimmering world looks up from the dark pools covered with clear glass. Cities, such as the mind of Durin could scarce have imagined in his sleep, stretch on through avenues and pillared courts, on into the dark recesses where no light can come, and plink, a silver drop falls, and the round wrinkles in the glass make all the towers bend and waver like weeds and corals in a grotto of the sea. Then evening comes. They fade and twinkle out. The torches pass on into another chamber and another dream. There is chamber after chamber, Legolas. Hall opening out of hall, dome after dome, stair beyond stair, and still the winding paths lead on into the mountain's heart. Caves! The caverns of Helm's Deep. Happy was the chance that drove me there. It makes me weep to leave them.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Is it adequate?
Oh my gosh, that was incredible. I was getting chills just hearing it. Oh,
But you
wow.
actually, and you're right. It is something that I had not really considered before. That, you know, when we lost that wonderful description,
Mm.
because you can't put everything in the film, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
But perhaps the magnitude of what was lost there is understated in the film.
Mm.
Yes.
Now, that's actually a great. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Tolkien always deserves a second read, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
When I say a second read, I mean a 20-second read.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. A 20th read.
Well, I've got an image here. So since we're on the topic of the glittering caves, so this is a snippet of footage that we don't see in either the theatrical or extended editions of Gimli here. Do you recall filming this? And the prevailing theory is that this is him in the glittering caves, maybe as an epilogue moment after all the events of Return of the King have happened.
I don't recall that at all. And I see he's wearing a lot of jewelry.
He does.
This is probably this looks like Gimli at home, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah.
You know, back where he's probably fabricating the jeweled case, the probably somewhat glitzy, overstated jewelry case in which you're going to have to look very carefully to see those three hairs.
Yes.
Carefully preserved. You know, and there are the three hairs from her golden head. Where? No, look there. I mean, look. Beautiful case, Gimli, but can't see the oh, no, is that a spider? No, that is not a spider's web. Look, use your damned eyes, can you idiot? Look, you see those beautiful, yeah, okay, we see them. We see them, Gimli, yeah, good. Nice job. So what happened after that? So are we relatively happy now?
Absolutely. Yes.
Till he be dead, call no man happy. The earliest I can find of that, it's attributed to everybody, you know, but the earliest that I can find is Solon in Herodotus's history. When King Midas is showing him his great wealth and things like that and saying, come on now, Solon, you've traveled a lot, you've seen the world a bit. Tell me, who do you think is the happiest and most fortunate man that you've ever met? I said, well, you know, there was this woman who had two sons, and she always used to drive into the festival of Athens each year, and there were no horses that year. Their horses had died, and yet she wanted to go to the festival, and her joy was complete when her two sons put her into the chariot and they trotted all the way from the countryside into the town. And she died that night, happy, not realizing that her sons had died of exhaustion. Till he be dead, call no man happy. That's the happiest moment.
Wow. Well, John, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, because I never know when to stop.
Well, I did want to give a shout out to your wife, Lisa, as well as Emma from It's Time to Shout James. They both were instrumental in setting this up today. Again, John's very generously donated his time, not only for this chat, but there's going to be the opportunity to where you could win a chat. Everyone always has more questions they wish I would have asked. So now you have your chance to ask John. So what they're going to do is they're going to raffle off a chat with John So it's $20 New Zealand dollars. Go to the website in the description below, and you can purchase as many entries as you'd like. It goes to a fantastic cause. We're helping James Dupree from down in Middle Earth itself, New Zealand, as he is fighting stage 4 Hodgkin lymphoma. And a portion of those donations also go to the Leukemia and Blood Cancer New Zealand. So go, please give generously at the link below. John, thank you so much for joining me today. You've been absolutely very, very generous with your time. It's been a pleasure. I am a huge Tolkien nerd, and I must say that talking to the one and only Gimli from this huge dwarf fan has been an absolute pleasure.
Aye.
There we go.
We dwarves must stick together. And remember, viewers, children, fans, there will come a time in your life of real crisis. And how will you behave? How will you recognize the right path to take? Well, this is what you'll do. You will ask yourself the great question: what would Gimli do? What would Gimli do?
It's fantastic. Fantastic advice, everyone. What would Gimli do? Keep it in mind. We'll see you next time here on Nerd of the Rings.
You've been a wonderful audience, and thank you for your interrogation. It was wonderful.